If you've been moving through this cycle with attention, something has already shifted, even if there's no dramatic moment to point to. That's intentional. The most meaningful changes here were never meant to announce themselves loudly. They were meant to settle. The core movement has been from activation toward regulation, from constantly doing toward quietly inhabiting experience as it unfolds. This isn't a loss of momentum. It's a refinement of how momentum is held. One of the first changes is increased sensitivity to contraction. Tension, resistance, or shutdown are now noticed earlier, before they become overwhelming. This sensitivity isn't fragility, it's intelligence. The system is learning to recognize its own signals before force is required. Contraction no longer has to escalate to get attention. It can be felt, acknowledged, and responded to without urgency. Along with this comes less self-judgment. When activation was the default, pauses felt like failure. Slowing down felt like giving up. Now, regulation is recognized as alignment. There's less pressure to explain or correct every shift in energy. What once triggered criticism now invites curiosity. Permission to pause is another quiet but profound change. Pausing is no longer losing ground. It's recognized as part of the cycle's intelligence. When movement slows, the body is integrating experience. This permission reduces internal conflict. Energy once spent fighting natural rhythms becomes available later. As urgency softens, action changes quality. There may be fewer dramatic pushes, but what happens is steadier and more sustainable. Action arises from a settled state, not from pressure or fear of falling behind. From a somatic perspective, this is the real success of the cycle. Regulation replaces intensity as the marker of progress. Calm is no longer mistaken for stagnation. It's recognized as capacity, the ability to stay present, open, and responsive without bracing or collapsing. If nothing outwardly dramatic has changed yet, that often means the foundation is being rebuilt beneath the surface. Patterns are loosening without force. The body is learning it can stay with experience instead of reacting against it. The deepest changes are often the least dramatic. Steadiness where there was urgency, clarity where there was noise, permission where there was pressure. From this quieter ground, the cycle continues, more coherent, more honest, and with far less effort than before.
It's natural to reach the end of a process and expect completion, to assume that once something is understood or stabilized, the cycle should stop. But what actually changes isn't that the cycle ends. It's that it continues at higher levels of experience. The movement here is from completion to continuity. The system isn't trying to finish the cycle. It's learning how to live inside it. As capacity increases, life responds by offering more opportunity, more visibility, more responsibility, more flow. This is often misunderstood. More doesn't simply mean more ease. It means more exposure to choice, uncertainty, and self-direction. More impact brings more nervous system demand. Being seen, relied on, or trusted with influence requires holding more intensity without contracting. These aren't signs of regression. They're signs that the field of experience has expanded. Because of this, familiar phases can return. Contraction may arise. Overwhelm may appear. Even collapse can still happen. The difference is scale and duration. Collapse doesn't disappear, it shrinks. Awareness arrives sooner. Recovery becomes faster. What once felt destabilizing now feels informative. The system recognizes what's happening before it takes over. Mastery isn't immunity. Mastery is responsiveness, the ability to integrate experience without needing to avoid it. The cycle continues, but friction decreases because less energy is spent resisting it. Somatically, this looks like gradual expansion of capacity. The body learns it can survive intensity without bracing and rest without shame. Safety increases not because life becomes predictable, but because the system trusts its ability to regulate through change. Each pass through the cycle builds familiarity. Each successful integration reinforces resilience. This understanding dissolves a common self-judgment, the belief that cycling means failure. When difficulty returns, it doesn't mean you've gone backward. It means you're meeting a larger version of life. The same intelligence that guided earlier movement is now operating under greater load. Continuity replaces the need for arrival. There's no final level where growth stops asking for regulation. The relationship with the cycle matures as expectations soften and trust deepens. The cycle doesn't end. Your relationship with it matures. And from that stability, life can continue to expand, not because the system is perfect, but because it's learned how to move, rest, integrate, and move again without losing itself.
Action changes when it no longer has to compensate for an unsafe internal state. Much of what's called discipline or ambition is the nervous system trying to override discomfort through effort. Pushing, bracing, forcing. These become strategies to stay functional when regulation is missing. Inside the cycle, the movement shifts from effort to coherence. Action no longer comes from pressure. It emerges from stability. When the body is regulated, action organizes itself naturally. There's no internal argument to win before moving. Energy becomes available without being extracted. Tasks don't need a surge of willpower to begin. Movement starts because it makes sense in the moment, not because something must be proven or avoided. This is where intuition becomes clearer. Without urgency compressing attention, signals are felt earlier and more precisely. They arrive quietly, as timing, as readiness, as a subtle yes or no. There's no rush attached. Intuition no longer has to shout because the system is listening. Decisions feel cleaner without fear of falling behind. Effortlessness here isn't laziness. It's openness in the nervous system. When there's no bracing, energy moves freely. Action becomes efficient because nothing is being resisted internally. Tasks may still require focus and persistence, but they're no longer heavy. They're carried by coherence, not force. As bracing dissolves, choice changes. Decisions aren't pressured by imagined consequences or internal deadlines. Choice becomes an expression of alignment instead of control. Wasted motion drops away. What remains is simpler, more direct, and more effective. Somatically, this looks like movement without push. Muscles engage without gripping. Attention stays present. This shift can feel unfamiliar at first. Without the tension of effort, action may seem almost too easy. What's missing isn't commitment, it's unnecessary defense. The system trusts it can adjust as needed. Over time, this becomes the baseline. Ambition shifts from how hard you push to how accurately you respond. Discipline becomes consistency rooted in regulation. Productivity becomes a byproduct of presence. When the body stops defending, action becomes simple, not because life demands less, but because the system no longer has to fight itself to meet what's required. As the cycle comes into view as a whole, one understanding becomes clear. Manifestation isn't a mechanism to operate. It's a relationship to inhabit. The movement here is from control to cooperation. When life is treated as something to manage, attention tightens around strategy, timing, and outcomes. The system braces. It directs more than it listens. But when manifestation is lived as relationship, orientation shifts. Reality is met as responsive rather than mechanical. Participation replaces manipulation. Reality doesn't respond like a machine that delivers outputs. It responds like a living field, sensitive to timing, capacity, and presence. Desire isn't a demand placed on the world. It's the opening line of a conversation. What follows isn't compliance or refusal, but dialogue. Life answers through conditions, feedback, and changing circumstances. These responses invite adjustment, not insistence. Receiving becomes the quiet measure of trust in this relationship. Not trust that things will go a certain way, but trust that you can stay present with what arrives. Receiving asks for openness without bracing. Availability instead of immediate control, evaluation, or protection. When receiving meets tension, life slows. When it meets presence, the dialogue deepens. Living inside this relationship means staying in ongoing somatic dialogue. The body becomes the primary listener. It registers alignment through ease, clarity, and sustainable energy, and misalignment through urgency, contraction, or shutdown. These aren't obstacles. They're the language of the relationship. Listening to these signals keeps the relationship honest. As listening replaces directing, effort softens. Action becomes responsive instead of imposed. Timing becomes clearer because it's felt rather than calculated. The need to force outcomes fades as cooperation builds. Life is no longer something to overcome, it's something to move with. Presence makes this possible. Presence isn't passive observation, it's participation. In presence, the cycle stays alive. Desire moves. Action follows. Rest integrates. Receiving stabilizes. This is what it means to live the cycle. Not chasing results. Not waiting for completion, but staying engaged in a responsive exchange with life itself. Manifestation isn't something you manage. It's something you live inside.